Okay, so I'm going to go through the chest and abdominal muscles on this video for kinesiology. Not for practical, but for your last quiz on the back, chest, and abdominal muscles. So first muscle we have is the diaphragm. The diaphragm we'll be showing you is the muscle that separates your thoracic cavity from your pelvic cavity, and it's going to be located on the inferior end of the lungs. So that little bell-shaped muscle on the inferior surface or base of each lung, so diaphragm. Next, we want to go to the external and internal intercostals. So I would show you the external intercostals as this muscle between the ribs here on the outside is the external intercostals. Same is true on this model. So these muscles on the outside between the ribs. For this model, you're then going to flip it over to show you the internal intercostals. Again, inter means between, costal means rib. On this model, I can also flip it over and show you the internal intercostals on the inside of the chest plate. Next muscle you have, the only new one for you for kinesiology, was levator costae. So think of the name levator, elevates the ribs, costae, and that's this lateralmost muscle. So notice it's longer than the others. It's going to go from the transverse processes of the mid-thoracics and all the way up, for that matter, anywhere you have a rib. So there's 12 levator costae muscles on each side because there's 12 ribs. So it goes from the transverse process out to the mid-posterior or dorsal surface of the rib body. So not this one next to it, this long one right here, right? The long one right there is the only one I can show you on this model for levator costae. Otherwise, it would be a picture. Then you have the external and internal oblique. So remember, that's where we have a little bit of discrepancy between the two models. So on this model, you're going to have two sides. One superficial, this is your external intercostal. You'll notice we can only see a little bit of the fascia here. So this is external intercostal. This side we've peeled away the external intercostal, so that's why we can see more fascia, and this is our internal oblique. I said intercostal, sorry. Internal oblique, external oblique. On this model, remember, it's a two-layer system. So here's our external oblique, the superficial of the two. We can see then a cutaway, and now we see the layer underneath, the internal oblique. So external oblique in this model, internal oblique. Then you have the rectus abdominis, again, straight up and down the abdomen. So here's our rectus abdominis. There's our rectus abdominis muscle. Then you're going to have the transverse abdominis. So on this model, you have to flip it over and look on the posterior surface, and here's our transversus abdominis. On this model, notice here was that external oblique and internal oblique, and then we did a cutaway, so there's a slice through of a layer, and you can see the transversus abdominis poking out, and again, look at the fibers, they're going transversely or horizontally. Next, you have the scalenes. So on this model, again, look for the one that goes most vertically, which is this guy right here. That's levator scapulae. Not that you have to know it, but that's a guideline. Here's your anterior, middle, and then posterior scalene. You can't see on this model because it would be underneath the trapezius here. So levator scapulae, right in front of it, middle, anterior scalene, posterior can't see because the trapezius is hiding it. On this model, sorry, I'm trying to record these and point and talk at the same time. It's a little treacherous. So here, this guy right here is our levator scapulae, right, number 45. So in front of it, then we have the anterior, right here, the middle, and the posterior scalene. So this one, we can see the posterior scalene because the trapezius is kind of scaled back a little bit. So again, you've got levator scapulae, so then anterior, middle, posterior scalene. And then last but not least, sternocleidomastoid. So on this model, it's cut right here, the superficial muscle that goes from the mastoid process behind the ear, coming down along the neckline. It would cross over the clavicle here and attach to the sternum. On this one, we can see more of its entirety. So again, here is your sternocleidomastoid. So it's superficial to your scalenes, it's superficial to levator scapulae, and again, sterno comes from the sternum, cleido crosses over the clavicle, inserts onto the mastoid process. So those are your chest,